Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Studio. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. It's been a rough couple days, just artistically. I've been doing fine personally, as well as can be expected anyway on this side of the bridge. Um, I had such high hopes to have this entire thing done, and as usual, ran into some technical problems. But I do have some fun things to show because I have made tremendous progress on the Major Mattingly since I started doing this. So what I'll do is I'll kind of walk you through it. I've been working on something since really this morning at about 8 o'clock. And as usual, it just keeps not doing what it's supposed to do. One of them is, one of the problems was a calibration issue. I'll get to that in a minute. I thought, you know what, I don't even want to show this. It's so weird. But this whole thing is about learning how this process works, among other things. And hi, everybody. Thanks for all the kind words. And some of the stuff I do have it's pretty fun. So here's what I'm going to do. I got a bunch of things to show you. So let's just go ahead and get started here. I think I showed last time some of the face tests and the voice tests and so on. We found out that the artificial AI voice is actually going to work pretty well. So what I did in the interim since we spoke last is I did just the heads. They're not connected to the body, but I just wanted to see how the voices and the faces matched. So in this first one I'm going to show you, it's a preliminary one. It's the first one I did, and I had a good face for Sinclair, Steve Sinclair, the guy in the red suit, and I had a good face for Jeff Gordon, the guy in the blue suit. But I had two different choices for Mace, and I had two different choices for Doug, and so I put them both up there. And so this first one you'll see two heads for Mace, one head for the other guy, one head for the other guy, two heads for Doug. And I was looking at these to see them in action, to see which one I liked the best, and I came up with two answers on that. And I'll just play this for you, then I'll tell you what I learned from this and what we did to correct some things, and then I'll show you what we learned and we pick it up on the next one. So let me see here. Okay, so everybody stay with us here. I'm just going to go to the Stratosphere Studio screen. Stay put, and here comes the first of the face voice tests. So here we go.
Well, now's a chance for us to see just how good this thing really is.
Well, now's a chance for us to see just how good this thing really is.
Well, now's a chance for us to see just how good this thing really is.
Well, now's a chance for us to see just how good this thing really is. I just hope it translates as well as, it should translate better than the other one because it's newer and had to get this, extra face motion capture device. So if it's not any better, then I'm just going to have some kind of major cow, I imagine.
I just hope it translates as well as, it should translate better than the other one because it's newer and had to get this, extra face motion capture device. So if it's not any better, then I'm just going to have some kind of major cow, I imagine.
I just hope it translates as well as, it should translate better than the other one because it's newer and had to get this, extra face motion capture device. So if it's not any better, then I'm just going to have some kind of major cow, I imagine.
I just hope it translates as well as, it should translate better than the other one because it's newer and had to get this, extra face motion capture device. So if it's not any better, then I'm just going to have some kind of major cow, I imagine. Well, now's a chance.
Okay, so now see, this is the problem with running tech demos or not even tech demos, just tests, because I get all these notes about things like they should have individual speaking characteristics, and I'm like well aware of that. This is the same audio file. It's the same video capture file. and it's just a test for how the voices look with the faces. So I saw those two heads for Mace and the two heads for Jeff, and I like the younger ones better. So I went ahead and did it again. One of the problems I had with that first test was that I thought the voices of Mace and Jeff were a little too similar. So I kept the voice for Steve. I kept the voice for I'm sorry, Mason and Doug were too similar. So I kept the voice for Steve, the voice for Jeff. I went with the young head for Mace, young head for Doug. I kept Doug's voice the same, raised it just a little bit higher in pitch, and then I changed Mace's voice significantly. And I think this is pretty much what I'm looking for here. So so this is this will be the second thing we did. So hang on a second.
Well, now's a chance.
Well, now's a chance for us to see just how good this thing really is.
Well, now's a chance for us to see just how good this thing really is.
Well, now's a chance for us to see just how good this thing really is.
Well, now's a chance for us to see just how good this thing really is.
I just hope it translates as well as it should translate better than the other one because it's newer and had to get this, extra face motion capture device. So if it's not any better, then I'm just going to have some kind of major cow, I imagine.
I just hope it translates as well as should translate better than the other one because it's newer and had to get this, extra face motion capture device. So if it's not any better, then I'm just going to have some kind of major cow, I imagine.
I just hope it translates as well as should translate better than the other one because it's newer and had to get this, extra face motion capture device. So if it's not any better, then I'm just going to have some kind of major cow, I imagine.
I just hope it translates as well as should translate better than the other one because it's newer and had to get this, extra face motion capture device. So if it's not any better, then I'm just going to have some kind of major cow, I imagine.
Well, now's a chance for us to see just how good
Okay, so I'm liking those quite a lot actually. And so then the next thing was to work on the suits. So I had the original kind of Major Matt Mason suits, and I had to do, thank you for the kind words, I had to change the textures, and I did all that in Photoshop. I wasn't real happy with it. Then I went to this high detail Mercury suit, and I couldn't get that to work, and the guy who was supposed to rig them just couldn't do it. So I went back to the ones that look like the Major Matt Mason toy. I spent a lot of time on Photoshop getting those textures right, and then now I think they look really good. So this is all this really is a test of the guys and the suits. The animation you're about to see next has them just doing stock standing there, and it looks especially dead because there's no facial animation. So the head is turning, but there's no, it's just this dead-eyed look. So put that aside. Mostly, this is a chance to have a look at the new suits. So here we go. We'll take a look at that. So we'll go back to black, and then here we go. Great. Eric says Jeff is short. Jeff is very short. He's probably 5'5", and so there was that. That was kind of cool. So what I did yesterday, and I, honest to God, in my infinite optimism or naivete or just plain stupidity, if you want, I really thought I'd have this whole thing finished by today. But what I decided to do next, prior to actually getting into the moon stuff and starting to really get this thing out the door with that aspect of it, I wanted to do one more test of the faces and the voices, and I thought, well, I have and something I could use, So I wrote a little 4 or 5 page script where they're being interviewed, and so I wrote kind of a, Entertainment Tonight kind of a thing. Is let's talk to the 4 guys who the talk of the world. Everybody's talking about this big revelation about the moon. So we're here talking to these guys, and so we've got a chance to interview them. And I had put together a studio shot. I've got a still of it here. So just this is them in the studio. Hang on a second. So I've been working on that, and then I wrote, like I said, I wrote a 4 or 5 page script talking about their backstories, how they got their, very briefly, how they got their call signs, and they were written with different pace, and it turns out that Steve Sinclair is the guy in the red suit. He's a command master sergeant in U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and they've all got different rhythms and they speak differently, and I thought, wow, this is going to be great. I can't wait to do it. I just did the studio. They don't come back to Earth. They got a little photo studio up there on the moon. And I really thought I'd have all 4 of them. I certainly felt I'd at least have Mace. So what this thing does is when you do this new metahuman animator, you train it to your face, and then it knows what your face is, and then maps that onto any metahuman, and it's supposed to work great. And the 2 sets of animations, the talking animations we've just saw, they've all got this kind of, this kind of down thing, because it's a calibration issue. I think that this scar is fooling Unreal Engine. I think it's giving it a hard time trying to determine, is this the corner of his mouth or is this the corner of his mouth? So that's a potential problem. Anyway, I thought for sure I'd have the Mace thing, and rendered it out, and I thought, wow, great. And the calibration is worse. It's worse. So I spent the last 2 hours trying to redo the calibration, and for some reason it just wouldn't do it. So it just wouldn't. It just kept 5 times just trying to recalibrate this thing. Nope. So I'm reluctant to show this. Nevertheless, I'm going to, because like I said, this whole idea of this channel is behind the scene things, and you can get an idea of how much work it is to get these things exactly right. So I'm not unhappy with the lighting. I'm not unhappy with the face. I'm not unhappy with the voice, but it's all like this. It's really bad, and bug-eyed too, little bug-eyed. That's all calibration issue. Nevertheless, the reason I'm going to play it for you is because it does. I did manage to at least get Mace's backstory in there, so it's just a 30 seconds or something like that. So again, this is not how it's going to look. He's bug-eyed, and his teeth they're just bad. It's just bad. But with that said, I do kind of like the backstory, so we'll just take a look at that, and then we'll be done with this. So we'll figure it out. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Sure. My name is Robert James Mattingly Jr., and I'm a major in the United States Air Force. Actually, it's my tactical call sign. While I was doing a routine RCS test in a rocket zipper that'd be the NF-104 Starfighter, I was level at about 35,000 feet, just under Mach 2. And I went and lit the AR-2, and just as I was about to start the pitch-up maneuver, it exploded. Not just a rocket engine. Took the entire vertical stabilizer with it, though, and since the 104 is a T-tail, the elevators departed as well, so I had to punch out just a tick over Mach 2. Anyway, when I go back to Edwards, the first thing the flight surgeon says to me is, "What's it like to reject at Mach 2?" And I said, "Well, it was like getting hit with a big freaking mace." That's what it was like. 1 second you're sitting there in air-conditioned comfort, then a minute later you're facing 1,500 mile an hour airspeed, so it hurt. Anyway, the name stuck, and so that's me. Sure. My name is Robert James Mattingly Jr., and I'm a major in the United States Air Force. Mattingly Jr.
Yeah, it looks like his mouth is upside down. It's driving me nuts. Driving me nuts. And I also found out that this one I processed the audio before I sent it over to the artificial voice generator thing, and I didn't think didn't think the voice was nearly as good as it was. Mace has basically my rhythms, and Steve Sinclair is very minimal, what you'd expect from a command master sergeant. He doesn't speak much. He kind of, very solid, slow, and just wants to get off of camera as much as possible. Just doesn't want to be there. For Jeff, I felt like he needed something, because I don't really mean to use this term, but in order to set him off, to make him make him different, which I thought was interesting. It's kind of like that business we talked about where you had to roll characters in Traveler or Dungeons and Dragons and try to make some sense out of it. He's a pretty small guy, and he's certainly the smartest guy on the base. So I actually made him. He doesn't talk very fast, but he's very loquacious. He just tends to run on about things, and I like that, actually. So he's constantly giving you details that yes, I could do it by having people I know come into the studio, but I don't know any actors, and it's just not on the table. So give me a chance to do the different cadences, see how it looks. So he just likes. It's not even like that he likes to talk. He's just so excited about his work. He's so excited about what he's doing that he just goes on and on and on about it. I'll just give you a quick little example of this here. I think I've got it right here. No, hang on. It gives him kind of a dimension that I just like. So when it comes to Jeff, just to give you an idea of the kind of, like I said, this kind of more information than you really need. He says, "Yes, hello, I'm Jeffrey T. Gordon, a T's for Thomas, and I'm on extended assignment from Naval Reactors, or to be more precise, and in my line of work, precision's important, it matters. So specifically, I'm a graduate of the United States Navy's Naval Propulsion Program, which lies under the regulatory umbrella of the National Nuclear Security Administration. I hold the rank of commander in the United States Navy, and my military occupational specialty is nuclear engineering." So it's I really, I delayed the show from yesterday. I was sure I would have this thing. Also, I wrote this whole thing with an interviewer, um, and I thought I'd have her off camera, and so I made her super perky and, you know, chirpy and upbeat. And then finally for Doug, who's cranky, I couldn't just have him just be cranky, so I decided for him that I would make him cranky and charming. So he's so the interviewer who's off camera, she's off camera, says, "How you guys doing? How you doing? How you doing?" And he says, "I am spectacular. How are you? Thank you for asking." He's just kind of smooth. And I'm going to read him with a southern accent and see what that does. Just a touch of one, and see what that does for uh, what the AI will do with that. But it's just been a real disappointing day. I really thought I'd have it today. I was here till midnight last night. I was here at 7 this morning, and I just thought no problem. And then it turned out, that you just had to recalibrate this thing again, and it just wouldn't do it. So I got to get that done because that upside down thing is really annoying. Um, but yeah, so this Doug guy's kind of a rogue. He's actually kind of flirting with her a little bit. And then no, my southern accent. If I do a southern accent for him, it would be it would be kind of a Virginia accent, be sort of a softer accent like that. Just something to set him off a little bit. Um, and and then I had an idea when I was driving over this morning early to get this thing finished, and I didn't even get anything I was really happy with. Um, I did have an idea that I liked a lot. Uh, I was trying to get in the mood, warm up the voice a little bit too, and so I had the Beach Boys on, as one is wont to do, and then we talked before about problems with the rights and so on, and we thought maybe we'd be able to get because I wanted to have the opening of Fun to represent California as California was in 1966, and I'd had this idea of fun playing montage of real footage. There's a really, I think I mentioned, I got a really great beach side scene, and I thought I'd have Mace, sitting there in his with his his fuel injected Stingray, even though Steve, who's the engineer, will be the one to constantly tell him the fuel injected Stingray has never once beaten a 413, never ever. Uh, so. So Barbara asked, just if you animate its expressions, will it transfer? Yes, it's supposed to transfer, and I've had it where it actually looked pretty good when it's calibrated. So I just act out the roles, and there you go. So I want to do that, and I started thinking about this whole thing, and I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to get the rights for fun, and if I put fun in there, it'll get demonetized. It may not get demonetized with a karaoke track. And I'm virtually positive it would not get demonetized if I got somebody just to do the opening guitar thing. But then I had an idea that I liked a lot. So I was just parking the car, I was in the car downstairs, just about to turn off the car, and I'm listening to Fun for like the third time through and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this. And then I realized, what would be really cool would be for these guys, and I'm going to do this in the colonies as well. I think it'd just be really cool if these four guys, just to pass the time, kind of sat out there on the lunar surface and just sang these songs, just sang them. And so I thought about fun. I thought about Steve singing Hot Rod Lincoln, because he's the gearhead. I thought about Come Fly With Me, and the idea of these guys just sitting on the moon there, drinking their what's it hang on, I had a line where they're making fun of Doug, and says it's this gentleman, and Mesa's a gentleman. That's kind of debatable, and they keep butting in. They said so. Doug's call sign is Sparks, and the second he says his name is Sparks, Jeff says just don't call him Sparky, and Mesa says no, he's right. Never call him Sparky. And then Jeff kind of pissed off. Says if you guys want to finish for me, I've got an ice cold hams waiting for me in the fridge. So the idea that these guys are sitting out on the moon there, doing singing Beach Boys tunes with the Earth up there, and that's when the first time it really hit me how homesick these guys could be, and how much that adds to it. And then I thought, okay, and then I thought, actually, it wasn't so much that they'd be singing fun, fun, fun. I thought what they should be singing is Sloop John B. And the idea of these four guys just sitting there in their suits on their Chase lounges or whatever, holding, beers in their special lunar beer drinking devices, looking up at the Earth and singing, I want to go home. Why don't they let me go home? This is the worst trip I've ever. They all look at each other for that one line. This is the worst trip I've ever been on, and I just think that's just really, really cool. And as I was listening to it again and again and again, I realized that I could break the song down into individual voices. That I could have the deeper voices sing a certain role and all the rest of it. So. I don't know. It just really, really appealed to me, and for fun, somewhere in this montage thing, you see it when they're on in the '60s in 1964, 65 California, back when California was, California, and then they find themselves up on the moon, and it's 2023, but. Steve has built, 4 rovers, one in each color. And these guys are just four-wheeling out there over the moon and just kicking up these huge rooster tails worth of lunar dust. And they're just racing, they're racing, they're playing football. I wanted to, when Mace was out at the Santa Monica looking out over the ocean there, I wanted to have his girlfriend down at the water there, and he's looking at her. And then I thought, instead of having him just sit there, put him in a wetsuit. He was, give him a surfboard. He was a surfer, And then if you show he's a surfer, then you can have him actually surfing down, one of these lunar mountains, which is really cool. And that's why it's got to be fun. Because that's what's departed the country, is fun. I said before, I think fun would be an excellent choice for our national anthem. But the longer I stay out here, and the more research I do into what we actually were doing, actually building and flying, the more heartbreaking it gets. We had the world in our hands there, and there was, and as far as I'm aware, there was nothing that stopped that progress train other than a lack of will, and somehow the people's, why didn't we go back to the moon? Well, we didn't go back to the moon because the 60s happened, not the early 60s. Those were awesome. Kind of the late 60s. We're not steely-eyed missilemen anymore. Now we're a bunch of filthy pot-smoking hippies just rolling around in the mud at Woodstock, and that's the beginning of this, this anti-American movement among Americans, and all this time, these communists are, just doing what they've been doing for 50, 60 years, just like termites, just eating away at all of this thing. And that's why I think that's why I really want to do this. I really want to do it because I want these four guys to be. I want it to be 1966 forever up there. 1966, building your own cars, You know, you're not flying with computers. You don't sit and play video games. You don't sit and watch, binge watch television shows, which they could do. Um, they just work on things and they maintain things and they just kind of have some beers and kind of just sing along like guys will do in situations where there's not a whole lot to do. That was such a frontier thing, and nobody really captures that very much. It's how much singing was actually done out there. And so the idea is that here we are in this this world where San Francisco is closing because they won't enforce the law on shoplifting, and people are having fentanyl fits in the streets of Los Angeles, and guys are throwing bags of poo at restaurant doors, and nobody does anything about it because it's intended that way. It was supposed to be. That's what they want. They want to scare the middle class out of here, and all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, actually happened very slowly. But where did it go? I remember seeing the Futurama, the Carousel Futurama GM exhibit in 1964 World's Fair, which I've mentioned several times. It's such a big effect on me, almost as big effect as watching the Thunderbirds. And we talked a couple of months ago when I saw the Thunderbirds out at Point Mugu in F-16s, and I thought, wow, that wasn't as good as I remember it. It must have been great. I must have just been so young it was really impressive. Then we found footage of the Thunderbirds at the show I saw in 1965 in Bermuda in the F-100s. These guys are 30 feet off the ground. And they're just so much more interesting and so much more exciting and so much more raw and cool. Cool, that's the word. And I just like the idea that America still exists today in the present time. Now, obviously, it exists all throughout the country. I mean, there's that American spirit is still here. It's going to be really tough for them to kill it. They can chase it away from the cities, but it never really belonged there anyway. And I think I just want to show people my age or a little older around there anyway, to remind them how much fun things were. And I really like to show young people what it's like to just not be constantly worried about offending people or about the environment. They're just gonna it's just like, can we just please go back to having some fun and building some things, and just there it is. So I've got a really good health and safety drones kill it, yeah, and HR departments. And Barbara Durant says, bring it back. It was such a blast back then. It was a blast. It was really fun. And I love the idea of seeing these guys playing football on the moon over a 400-yard long field, and I love the idea that Robert J. Mattingly Jr., otherwise known as Mace, was a high school, or maybe even the Air Force Academy quarterback. I like that a lot, and I'd like to tell stories about the hard-working guys and the athletic guys getting the girl, instead of it being, oh no, we've got to celebrate weakness, and anybody who's physically strong or athletic, they've got to be evil. So there you go. Zachary says, it reminds me of the song, all I want to do is have some fun. That's a great song too. But yeah, and also that innocence, just that kind of innocence, just sort of sweetness to it. And I still look down on the Earth from the moon all the time personally, and just wonder what the hell happened here. What happened? Where did the time traveler come in and put us on this awful, god awful timeline? And all I have to do is go to the Air Force Museum and see. It's not like we made it up, All of the really cool stuff there is 50 years old. And so as I think I mentioned last time or the time before, I'm gonna bring those things back too. I'm gonna bring back guys like Chappie James and Gus Grissom, uh, and I'm gonna bring back things like the SR-71 and the F-104, which is the F-104 just doesn't look real. It just doesn't look real. It's so freaking cool, and most people, under 40 now, really almost under 50 now, have no idea or no possible conception of what things were like, and how, not only how see, it's like there's a difference between being optimistic and think, well, it sure would have been nice, but so far I just don't see anything in history that stopped us from doing it other than politics. Airtechie says the F-104 was a death trap. Yeah, it was the Widowmaker, all right. It The wings were so small on that to create low drag and get the thing really fast. The wings the size of a office desk, and I'm told that the leading edge was so sharp you could actually cut your hand on it. But there's almost no wing there, so the thing has to take off and land at a ferociously high speed. My understanding also is that the first F-104s, I heard this story, I don't know if it's true, it sounds like it might be true, is that the first F-104s, they ejected down. And that's nice if you're at, 30,000 feet, but if you're, at 10 feet or something, not so nice. And the F-104, you roll that thing into a 80-degree bank and pull hard on the stick, and you can turn that thing in a 360-degree circle and probably remain within the state of Connecticut. It's not a dogfighter. It doesn't do anything but just go fast. But man, it looks good going fast. And so I'm gonna have, they made 3 of those rocket assisted F-104s with the booster rocket on the base of the tail and the reaction control systems, because they were up out of the atmosphere, and they were testing, this using, thrusters to control the aircraft or the spacecraft, whatever the case may be. And I believe they built 3 of them. Jaeger crashed one of them. That was in the right stuff. I'm going to say, yeah, that's right. We built 3 of them at Edwards. And then we had 25 of them out at Area 65, or wherever the hell else we finally decided to do this. And you're going to see rows of, I like the idea of seeing 15 B-70 Valkyries on the ramp. I like that a lot. Eric wants to know what's the fastest airplane of all time. I'm pretty sure it's the A-12 Oxcart. I'm quite sure that that's faster than the SR-71, and I don't think the B-70 ever got up to quite that speed. But oh my God. Airtechie says there was a Luftwaffe F-104 pilot that flamed out on takeoff, flipped the bird over, and then ejected, and then he drifted down into his own burning wreckage. Boy, that's it. So anyway, the X-15. There you go. That's right. There's your answer. Infidel 42 has beat me to it. I don't know why it never occurred to me. I don't think about the X-15 as much as I should. Yes, the X-15 is the fastest airplane. B-70 had 6 engines. The X-15 was Mach 5 plus, so that's practically twice the speed of the SR-71, or pushing it anyway. And there's pretty good evidence that, well, there's no question if they'd wanted to, they could have had the first man in space in an X-15 and just, gotten through that artificial limit. Airtechie says it's more of a rocket. Yeah, that's true. That's probably fair. It doesn't take off on its own. So I would go with, I think it's probably the A-12, which became the SR-71, heavier and slower, a little bit slower. Anyway, so that's that. So it's been a rough day, and I'm not, I'm just so frustrated from just get big sprint, and then boom. Oh, well, this was working yesterday. Why isn't it calibrating? I don't know. Anyway, let's do some questions, why don't we? And I gotta get that I got to get that calibration issue solved. That's bad. Let's see. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, so I'm just thinking about all this, work I did on this thing for the last couple of days, and just how much I really wanted to have it here, and then at the same, and I'm just kind of thinking also like, I mean, there's good stuff here. It's just really nice to have, 15 people working on this at the same time. That would be lovely. Let's see what we got here. Come on. I'm just so pissed off about that mace business. I mean, I'm just so pissed off at it. I just like, that just shouldn't be happening. And it's just like, finally, I got everything in place. Yes, everything, all the things. Yep, all the blueprints compiled. Yep. All right, let's run it. Come on. Did I get? No. Where did we go? I'm sorry. I'm having a day. Yeah, member forum. Yeah. Okay. There it is. I don't know what the heck page I was on before. Okay. Yeah, I was just so jazzed too. It really is kind of sad. Chris Taylor. Oh, this could be fun. I pulled the unclassified project summary for Project Horizon off of the Defense Technical Information Center server and posted it in the member forum post, Inspiration and References for the Last Man on the Moon. It includes one of the color slides I don't think are available anywhere else, which I did see, Chris. Thank you for that. Unfortunately, it seems the original detail work had not been scanned. A paper copy is available at the University of Alabama at Huntsville Library in the Heinz Hermann Coel collection. If you have any Strata Loungers in Huntsville at UAH, or perhaps one of them could find time to go and make a copy of them to post there as well. Wow, that's tremendous. Thank you. H.H. Coel is the original author of the studies, so it probably has some very interesting insights. It is in Box 1, Identifier 206. My God, you people are just amazing. Would you want to ask the Blue Blaze Irregulars if one of them could swing by and check it out? Figuratively, you can't remove them from the library's special collections area. Yes, if any Blue Blaze Irregulars happen to be in the area, that would be wonderful. The aforementioned forum thread also has other material, including video of testing the Apollo suits by driving headfirst into rocks in 16G on the Vomit Comet. I had no idea. That's just so cool. And unclassified films of early space nuclear reactor work. Wow, wow, wow. Chris, you're an amazing guy. Like, so many people watching this are just amazing people. There's a lot to say there. I just think it's remarkable that study was commissioned in 1959 and was fairly confident that we could have 20 men on the moon by 1966. Now, I'm sure, it's like, but this is kind of this is the thing about this kind of strange combination between it. It's not really an alternate timeline so much as it's a secret fictional timeline. But as much as NASA got accomplished, I just wonder what would have happened if they'd left it in the hands of the military and given them like a ton of money. I mean, the dinosaur program was you had a space shuttle in 1961, 62, basically. And by the way, I need to talk to Bert about this because I hadn't really noticed it before. But the dinosaur program, dynamic soaring, or X-20, I want to say, it looks quite a bit like Spaceship One. It's got the twin booms and the horizontal vertical stabilizer out back on those twin booms. But yeah, we were ready to go, and I don't know what happened, but something happened, and it wasn't good. So, sawed off, Swampy. Let's see. All right, let's see. Thank you, Chris. That means a lot to me. Not just the information, but just the fact that you went to the trouble to do it. I'm really very grateful. It's good to know that these things, actually do exist. It wasn't a joke. A second. Where'd it go? All right, here we go. Marusha Dark. Millennials versus boomers. Before you say anything, before I read anything for you, I was thinking about, okay, boomer, I heard somebody say that, and I saw it in a movie or something, and I thought, okay. And I thought, well, that's actually kind of a perfect expression for Gen Zs, right? It's not even an argument. It's just kind of walking away. Yeah, okay, boomer. Yeah. But I thinking this over, I realized, you know what? If boomer is considered a slur, and it is certainly to some people, then it's got to be the coolest slur in the world. I just, doesn't get any better than that. It's like, you're a boomer? Yeah, man, I'm a sonic boomer. I'm a 24-2 nuclear powered, destroy the world 4 times over kind of boomer. That's the kind of boomer I am. I just think it's a cool term, frankly. But, okay. All right. Okay, boomer. Thank you. Here we go. Hi, Bill. I've been thinking about what you said regarding millennials and how they always seem to write fathers and old men as dark, bitter, cynical, oft unredeemable losers. I'm reminded of the phrase, write what you know, and it occurred to me that maybe their only experience of male roles, if they even had any to begin with, are all of that particular type. That's a very interesting observation, Marusha. If they have nothing else in their lives to draw upon, no positive examples of good fathers and good men for counterbalance, might that then color their perception of how reality works and influence how they write, in as much as someone who's never had experiences with planes writing Roger Wilco when it's not appropriate? There's more, but that's a superb point. And actually, one of the advantages of doing the Mace Mattingly thing is I have the ability to speak in different voices. I can tell both sides of the argument, and I really would like Mace Mattingly to be kind of a father figure. I don't mean that he's going to be actually raising people, but I'd like to think that he's setting an example of how you can have fun and do these cool things, and at the same time still be a responsible guy and not get yourself killed. And I just want him to be the all-American guy, and I'm real happy when his mouth's not doing that. I'm real happy with the way he looks. Changed his eye color from blue to brown. I'm real happy with the voice, and he just looks. Well, he looks like a man. Is what it is. He just looks like a man. Doesn't look like a boy or like a heroin addict or or some kind of child or something, or some kind of girl, like David Cassidy kind of look. It's just he's just a man's man, and a woman's man too. So anyway, continuing. You're of the boomer generation, and I've often spoke of their many accomplishments, so I'm sure you'll disagree with what I'm about to say next. This is not a knock against you, but the average experience and opinion of millennials is that the boomers collectively screwed them, financially, politically, and in raising them to be the way they are, spoiled, woke, lazy, etc. There's no question that they're the children of the boomers, and the boomers had responsibility for it, so there's obviously something here. Whether you agree with that statement or not, I'm sure you'll probably also tell me that a fictional hero meant to transcend reality and be better than that, but I'm sure you'll also agree that characters should be grounded in reality. So with all that said, Perhaps such rosy and heroic characters come off as too fantastical to that particular demographic, and the shift to gritty realism is reflective of their own personal experiences. What do you think? Um, uh, I think I think when Natasha saw the first episode of Empire of Terror, she got a little defensive about it, and I don't blame her. And I was always concerned that this would be a case, not defensive like like, oh, it was okay, just it's just such a shameful thing. It's like if you just sat down and watched an hour on slavery, you just become. So she was saying, that talking about all the good things that she experienced when she was young under what was left of the Soviet system, like these summer camps and you go to college without having to pay for it, and everybody in the country got their own house, apparently. Certainly, Natasha's mom got a free house. It was just given to them by the state, and so all of these things. And she said, I just think you need to be fair, and my response to that was, well, I don't think I need to be fair. I think I just need to be accurate. What I'm getting at here in answer to your question about, am I painting too rosy a picture or not? I look at this as kind of a trial. Thank you, Christian. I needed that. I really do. I think of it as kind of a trial against. So that, look, I think the ultimate responsibility of the boomers is that they let them go to school and didn't pay nearly enough attention to what they're learning in school, because all of this stuff that they learned about the Gen Zers that you mentioned, they didn't mostly get that from their parents. They got it from teachers, but the parents weren't there to do anything about it. And by the way, a fair amount of this is, and the reason I say that is because so much of this is an invented perception. Like, I've seen millennials and Gen Zers saying, "You boomers left us this world that's about to collapse." It's like, are you out of your minds? Seriously? Yes, we've only got a few years left to live because you boomers have destroyed the planet with your horrible fossil fuels, and we're just weeks or months away from all dying here. And I'm thinking, dude, we cleaned up the country. The country was filthy, and we cleaned it up. And it's in much better shape than it was environmentally. Much, much, much better shape than it was when I was born in 1959. Much better. And this idea about how, well, you ruined this and you ruined that is like, what's the matter with you? What is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, Zumi? What's the worst thing that ever happened to you? Have you ever been cold? Have you ever been hurt? You ever been in real pain? And if you have been in real pain, I bet it's not been more than half an hour. You've never been hungry in your entire lives. I haven't either, mind you. I'm not trying to say that. That's what the greatest generation did for us. But this idea that boomers have handed them this living hell. No. Boomers got when computers and the internet came in, we were old enough to appreciate them as something new, and we had pre-existing friendships that predated the internet. And so when the internet came along, it was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. It turns out that it's so toxic now that these Gen Zers have never known anything other than social media. Social media is horrible and very destructive, plus all the presence of porn and all the rest of this stuff, and just endless games, 24-hour entertainment, binge watching everything. It's like the reason that Gen Z thinks everything is just so horrible is because everything is so wonderful. They've got nothing to compare it to. I don't have anything to compare it to compared to my dad. I would say, I'm really hungry. My dad said, you're not really hungry. I am, Dad, I'm starving. No, he said, Bill, if you're really hungry, if you're really starving, you'll start eating your shoes. What? Yeah, you'll boil the leather and you'll start eating your shoes. That's what people do when they're really hungry. Really? Yeah. Okay. I don't, you're right. I'm not really hungry. I'm just modern American hungry. And Ironhead says it's socialist media. It's agitprop. It's agitprop, the whole thing. we did the right angles today, and I was going to do one. I saw a story on Instapundit about how about 25% of students now believe have a positive image of capitalism. 25%. The other 75% are very busy talking about how evil capitalism is, as they write on their MacBook Airs or whatever, MacBook Pros or whatever they've got in Starbucks, drinking $12 coffees on AT&T Wi-Fi, and that's the truth of it. So here's where the boomers are responsible for this. We allowed this stuff to take root in their heads, and we never did anything to straighten them out. One of the things we didn't do is we didn't just go in and start arguing about this term capitalism. You know, capitalism is a term invented by Marx, and he invented it because he wanted it to be a pejorative term. Just trying to defend capitalism, capitalism has a bad ring to it, and that's why Marx picked it. Because if Marx had said the free market, well then, who's going to argue with that? Nobody. So we'll have to call it capitalism, and capitalism means that in order to play the game, you must have capital, and you got to be like the Monopoly guy, you know, with a top hat and a big fat cat with with a mustache and a vest, holding two big sacks with dollar signs on it. And if you can't be a rich guy, then capitalism is not for you. And it's like, come on. You buy a comic book, that's capitalism. You buy a hoodie, it's capitalism. Any kind of private property and free market, that's what it is. And we just fall once again fall right into the trap of these master liars and deceivers. You know, capitalism. Okay, all right. Anyway, 25%, more than half in the cases of liberal students is approaching 80%. Think that teachers should be punished or fired for saying something that the students don't like. The problem with this is that this is an unsustainable position. The less you hear, the less upset you get by putting, marshmallows on top of everything sharp out there, the more sensitive you become. It's a constant feedback loop. The more you isolate yourself from insults and outrage and emotional trauma, the more sensitive you become to emotional trauma. We're built to worry to a certain degree, and we will worry about our, soy latte in the same way we would worry about whether or not we can, catch this mammoth for dinner tonight, because that's how we survived. So the more you give these students what they're demanding, namely a world where nothing ever upsets them, the more upset they get. And that's why it's not allowable. It's why it's not sustainable. It can't go anywhere. It's already running up against the limits of it. You can, the thing I ended up doing today, from my right angle, was they put out an online gender survey that students had to answer, and some percentage of the students decided they didn't want to answer it. Some of them said it's not our business to be talking about this, we should be talking about what's in the classroom. But some students put down, for their gender identity, they put down Apache attack helicopter. And I thought that was hilarious, but the part that really got me to do the story was that the researchers who were doing this gender study apparently had to check themselves into mental institutions because they had to heal from the pain, the psychic pain of hearing a kid saying, "I identify as an Apache attack helicopter." This apparently was so hurtful and outrageous that these grown children, who were presumably out there in the world, couldn't handle the fact that somebody was making fun of them. And I just found that to be hilarious and terrifying at the same time. I said on the show, it's like the problem was they said I identify as an Apache attack helicopter. If they said I identify as an Apache, they would have been fine. But God bless those kids that wrote that. It's a bit of a meme. The reason it's so offensive to people who had to go and get medical help, mental treatment, because they thought it was insulting to say that you were something that you couldn't possibly be only because you believed in it. I thought, wow, imagine that. But yeah, so the people who were running the quiz, the teachers, had to get mental health counseling because people didn't take it seriously, or some people didn't. And that's telling me that that this is not a problem. This whole thing is all about your personal neuroses, and that's all there is to it. When you see these green-haired 23-year-old education majors coming in and saying, well, yesterday I talked to my kids about, I came out to my second grade class that I was a lesbian, and I was really, really worried about it. But it turns out that they all were really cool about it, and they just completely validated everything that I've been feeling, and I felt so much better after I came out to them, and I'm sitting there thinking, the problem is not that we have this issue with gender or anything else. The issue is that you are completely neurotic children. You're just plain neurotic children. And if you need a group of 6 or 7-year-olds to tell you that you made the right choice in a girlfriend for yourself, you've got something fundamentally wrong with you. And all of this stuff that Gen Z and to a lesser degree millennials are all about is just about, we don't want to be upset. We don't want anything to upset us. You don't get that. Even if I didn't think it would, I think it's going to come to an end, like a high G end. But even if it didn't, even if this whole thing even if this entire even if woke philosophy were sustainable, I still think it'd be bad for you. But I don't think there's any way you cannot survive by getting weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. Because if for no other reason, there are people out there who are not buying into this whole thing, and they're not going to be conflicted about, doing what they have to do. Marisha says, and this is why I fear the Huxleyan dystopia more than the Orwellian one, because how do you argue against safety and happiness and getting everything you want? Not easy. I've never heard of the Huxleyan dystopia. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for the kind words there, Cesar, as well. So I guess the Huxley dystopia is the world where, I just love this expression so much, is a world where everything that is not mandatory is forbidden. That's what they want. They want a world where everything that is not mandatory is forbidden, because they get to decide what's mandatory and what's forbidden. I know some SEALs. I'm proud to say I want one of them relatively well anyway. And this guy is the calmest guy I've ever seen. I've never seen him get upset about anything. And why would he? What's going to upset him? He used to jump out of airplanes twice a night, parachute into, deepest, darkest bad guy territory, and come back with a couple of high-value prisoners. He'd do that twice a night, and people shooting real guns at him. And once you have that level of reality, you don't get too upset about somebody chewing a Pop-Tart into the general shape of a pistol. So all of this comes back to you could say, look, okay, Boomer, that's the way it was for you and you want it for everybody, but the world has changed. Natasha tells me this quite a lot, actually. The world has changed, they're different, they're just different. So I said, honey, if they were just different, I would say, okay, it's not my cup of tea, but I don't think they're just different. I think they're much, much weaker. And if I didn't care about them, I wouldn't be worried about it. And if I actually hated them, then I'd be tickled. about this, and I'm not. I'm scared to death for them because they've just been lied to their entire lives, and Marusha's point is correct. I don't think that the parents lied to him so much. I just think that the parents just shipped him off to school. And how long have we known that schools were left wing? How long have we known that colleges were left wing? How long have we known that media was left wing? How long? 30 years now? 40 years? Most of these millennials aren't that old even. So, okay. We knew it was toxic, and we sent him anyway. Why? Because it was easy. Because when we went there, it wasn't toxic, so we'll send him, and, well, is that what they're teaching him? Yep, that's what they're teaching him. Well, I guess there's nothing you can do about that. Well, yeah, there is. But it's going to take work, and so they didn't. And again, I got something really bad in my throat here. Again, how do you lose to people who are such weenies? How do you lose to communists? I mean, they have to have a terror state to get what they want from people, and we're all about freedom and surfing and, you know, fast cars and loud guns and hot chicks and stuff, and they're selling this nothing is fun, everything is horrible, it's getting worse, you're about to die. And if you're not angry enough, then we have no use for you. You're not allowed to compete, you're not allowed to excel, you're not allowed to do anything on your own except see how high you can get on the victimhood scale. And so, okay. I'll just, look, sometimes it's really easy to just simplify things. Just step back and just simplify them and peel away all of the this and that and all the social media, just strip it all away. The reason I'm fighting for this is because I have no doubt in my mind at all that when my generation was teenagers, we were much happier than these teenagers are. Certainly we're healthier, and that's part of why we were happier. We were much happier. And we had to live under a real threat, not a make-believe threat, you know? We didn't have to, you know, well, someday this planet's just going to catch fire. It's like, yeah, it's going to catch fire, you know, here in Miami. It's going to be 7,000 or 8,000 degrees hot for a couple milliseconds, and we had to carry that around. But we were just so much happier. And then yeah, and Mike, I'm sorry, Mick Fromick says, how do you lose to them? By not imposing consequences for bad behavior. So why do we do this? Why do we tolerate this? You know, why do we tolerate this? You really have to take it to the... I mean, San Francisco is closing. There is no more Fisherman's Wharf. There's nobody there anymore. It's gone. Everything's boarded up because the crime is so bad, because the crazy people and the homelessness and the needles and the drug addicts and the fentanyl and the lunatics have driven everybody out of Fisherman's Wharf. And so there is none anymore. And the question is not the trouble's not with the drug addicts. The trouble is with the fact that, and the trouble's not even really with the government, the city officials. The trouble is with the people who elect city officials that have this agenda. And that's why the more I think about it, the more I come to the conclusion I can't think of any other explanation for it. This progressivism is a form of mental illness. You know, forget about your own quality of life if you're so concerned about other people. Let's just say you don't give a damn about your quality of life. 30, 40 years ago, there weren't people dying on the streets from drug overdoses. There weren't people sleeping under bridges. There weren't these assaults and people just smashing the windows of cars because the law was enforced. And it was a better time then because people were happier. And you know this, and you voted for this that we have here now. And why is it that does nothing get through? Nothing is going to penetrate this nothing will, because it's too important to them. This is who I am. I'm a good person. I'm a good person because I'm a Democrat, and I'm a good person because I love trans kids and all the rest of this stuff. It's like they are so insecure about themselves that they don't that the idea of going against the current thing is just intolerable to them. And we have a first time chat from would be Captain Peter Griffin. Hello, hello, Peter. Hello, brother. Am I one of those reptilian believers? I see a man-sized lizard behind you. Actually, these are the lizards that I believe in. The Gorn are a horrible race, violent people. I often wonder how they manage to build starships, given the fact that they dress in rags and have no apparent technology and fingers like sausages, but maybe they just have big buttons. Here's a super chat from Whittleton who says, sorry for missing live tonight, Bill. I just watched a drum corps international competition. It's one of the best things this country has produced. Can't wait to catch up on my commute tomorrow. All the best, a happy warrior. Thank you very much for that, Whittleton. And by the way, drum corps stuff is just awesome. I just love it. I love it. I just love it. One of my favorite ones is there's like a battle of the drum lines between the U.S. Marines and U.S. Marine Band and South Korean band from about 2009 or 12 or something like that. And I just love the competition, and I mean it's fairly common for these things now, but I'd never seen it before this. So the Koreans are doing their thing, and the Marines are doing their thing, the Koreans are doing their thing, and the Marines just march forward, and then the Marines just start playing their drums. And I just thought that's the ultimate ownership right there. But this is what I love about this is the 1966 world I'm trying to show off. You know, it's the world of these guys who are marshalling airplanes, and they're doing, you know, they're launching Hornets off the deck of a carrier, and they're dancing to Gagnon style, and these guys are out there in Supergirl miniskirts, or they're you know, they're just having fun. It's been a while since I talked about this, but I think one of my favorite things, in fact, whenever I'm feeling low, I just one of my go-to things. There's a couple of videos, I found two of them that really, really encapsulate this. And what it is it is a ground show for the Thunderbirds prior to the takeoff. And so when the pilots step out to the jets, and they close the canopies and fire it up and all the other stuff, and these enlisted personnel are going around the jet, and there's probably 4 guys and women per jet, something like that, and a crew chief. And all of the ground stuff is just completely choreographed. They're just like, you know, they're like mechanical robots, and everything's a precise turn and all of this, and that's impressive. And, you know, and them saluting and all, it's all real impressive. And then something happened. I've seen it a couple times after the walk around, and just before the jets roll, these enlisted personnel are looking up at the officer in the jet, and they toss him a salute, and he tosses a salute back, and then they start doing this hand gesture thing. And it's the most amazing thing I have ever seen. It's just so phenomenally cool. They're just, this ground crew I mean, they're looking up at this officer, obviously, and they're basically doing all these hand gestures, saying, "Go out and get him, you know, go get him, man. You know, we're right behind you." And the officer is he's not looking down on them. It's just like such a team effort. It's just so fantastic. This relationship between the officers and the enlisted men, I don't think you find anywhere else, certainly not in any Russian or Chinese Navy or anywhere other than possibly the British, but it's just so genuine. And then the enlisted guys in the Thunderbird maintenance team, they line up, and then the jets just taxi by them one by one, and every time one of these jets come by, these guys are making their hand signals, and the pilots are doing this, and they're just, you know, thumbs up, and then they just roll, and it's like, man, it makes me feel good. just makes me feel good. Just make Natasha watch this. I said, this is what our military's all about, man. These guys are having fun, fun, fun. They're having fun, fun, fun. And that is how you can tell that's a gauge of morale. I watched these guys, Gangnam Shooter I saw the video when he had, I don't know, 60, 70,000 hits. It's several million now. But a guy, a shooter on the Eisenhower? I think it was the Eisenhower. Basically put together a video of these guys launching jets dancing to Gangnam style. And it's just epic. Epic. And I look at these guys who are doing the marshalling, and I look at the reaction of the pilots, and they're just having a blast. And you get the same thing too with the air-to-air refueling, at least in the Air Force. The Navy has the drogue and probe thing, which is much harder. I've had some simulator experience with this. But when the Air Force tanks, they, even on the fighters, they fly the boom down. You have to have a flyable boom because you can't catch a basket with a B-52. And so when the Air Force is tanking up, you've got this officer or two officers in this jet. He's 30 feet away, if that, 20 feet maybe. The enlisted man is looking down, he's lying on his stomach, flies the refueling probe in, you're taking fuel, fantastic. And then they sit and chat for a while. And it wasn't until I started doing this on the sim, and on a realistic sim, you realize how hard it is. That the chatting and stuff is there to keep you relaxed, because you can't do this if you're tense. It's the weirdest thing in the world. It's just the strangest thing to train your mind to do, really, because it requires so much precision, and you have to be just constantly calculating, velocities and relative position and all of this stuff. It's just so frickin' hard, and it's impossible to do it unless you just plain relax. Guys sing to themselves, or they'll have their backseater they'll have them sing them a song. This guy's got a great channel called Growler Jams. He's a F-18 Growler pilot, and he sounds like a motivational. He sounds actually like a camp counselor. He's so cool. He's so mellowed. Welcome to the jam. So so we're going to taxi over to Cat 3, and he says every time he has to hit the tanker, he just wrinkles up his fingers and toes. He just wrinkles them up for a minute, and then just relax. And it's true. You can try and hit that basket forever, and then you cannot do it if you try. The only way you can do it is by not trying, and I don't know how to explain it any better than that, but that's really honest to God how it is. So on a drogue basket thing, just because you don't have to, I know it's more plain stuff, but it applies to a lot of things. It applies to driving, for example. You've got this long hose. There's a high drag funnel, basically, like a basket, and you've got to fly this probe into this funnel, and the only way you get the probe there is to move the entire jet. And I tried to do this on a sim for hours. I'm just looking at the basket, just looking at it, just trying to fly. It's impossible. It's just not possible. And then I did some searching on YouTube, and I realized no, the real pilots and the DCS sim pilots will tell you, no, you can't look at the basket. What do you mean I can't look at the basket? No, if you look at the basket, you just chase the basket all day. You'll never hit the basket if you look at the basket. Well, how do I do this if I don't look at the basket? It's like, just look at the top of the thing where the hose comes off of the pod at the bottom of the wing, right? Just look at that, yeah. Just keep your eyes on that, and then just let the plane fly the basket, and it sounds like it's impossible. Yeah, the basket is essentially a drogue. It's a high drag basket-like funnel, and you got to put this. So this thing's maybe this wide, maybe, and you got to put that probe in there. And if you get it inside the funnel, it'll slide into position and lock. But you have to hit that thing, and it's like you just you're just staring at this thing. It's impossible, and then suddenly you just don't stare at it. You're just looking up at the base of the wing here, and it's like, yeah, the basket's a little far off to the right. It's out of my peripheral vision. I can tell the basket's a little bit off to the right. I'm not even going to move the stick. I'm just going to think about the plane being a little bit more to the left, right, little, and the basket's just flowing over here, and I'm singing to myself. Every time I do this refueling thing, I sing "Singing in the Rain" to myself. Singing in the rain, I'm just singing in the rain, and a glorious feeling. I'm snap, got it. It's amazing. It's really amazing. And of course, once you get the basket, then you have to stay on the basket, and that's also something that's impossible if you try and do it. Oh, I got the basket. I must maintain this position here. You're off, and then you just get to a place where it's like, no, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just flying along. I'm just flowing. I'm chatting. I'm talking to the enlisted guys up there if I'm getting the probe, and I'm as loose as a goose on Matus, and I'm just hanging here. And me and the jet, we're just simply having ourselves an absolute blast. And the lower you are on fuel, the more desperate you get to hit that basket, and that's how you end up running out of fuel. What's our fuel state? Doesn't matter. Got all the fuel in the world. We're not in any hurry. We don't have to worry about a thing. Basket's going to take care of itself. Jet's going to fly itself to the basket. I'm just here for the ride. I'm just singing in the rain. Contact. You're taking fuel. It's fun, but anyway. Okay, let's see. Chris Taylor again. And we got a couple of Erics, and I think we might actually get out of here in one piece. And a Jacob. All right, let's see what we got here. Here we go. Chris is an interesting fellow. He's always had just these incredible connections here. I have something that ties your Men on the Moon backstory with the right angle on DoD audits showing missing trillions and even McNamara, and a previous question on personal unwritten histories. It's an anecdote from an elderly friend, however, in case you are short for time and want to skip down to the last two sentences. No, we'll just read it. Way back when the Strategic Air Command was figuring out how to win a nuclear war, they had a problem regarding replacement parts. SAC had a number of essential systems with replacement parts so sophisticated it was unreasonable to expect a post-nuclear exchange America to have the capability to continue producing them. That's why they've got to arm those B-52s with stone knives and bearskins. That means that when SAC took delivery of the systems, they also needed to have enough spare parts on hand to fight the entire war to the end. That's interesting. Yeah, there's no gearing up for World War III. It's whatever you got when the balloon goes up, then you're never going to have more than that. So they had to make a reasonable guess at how long a nuclear war would last. Supposedly, it fell to fellow Billwiddle.com member and Stratolauncher Phil LeMay's uncle Kurt. Wow. To make that decision. That's so incredible. So Phil could confirm or disprove this. SAC apparently decided that the longest American civilization might have to fight a war was 100 years. They were giants in those days. So 100 years worth of wartime spares were procured and carefully stored. Enter Robert McNamara and his whiz kids. One day, an accountant shows up at a SAC base with a computer printout. They had discovered the Strategic Air Command's procurement mistake when McNamara's computer kids at the Pentagon ran an analysis of spare parts consumption rates to optimize the number of parts kept in inventory. I see where they're going with this. They were efficiency experts. That was the term that was in such vogue in the early 60s. Efficiency experts. What do you do? Well, we make toasters. Ooh. Well, what you need, young man, is, since it's 1963, is you need to get an efficiency expert into your factory, and the efficiency expert will show you how to arrange things so you can get more work done for the same amount of effort. Wow, that's great. So this efficiency expert that you're going to bring in, he's got like a career in toasters, does he? No, he's never worked a factory job in his life. He's got computer printouts and he's got theory. I'm not saying that some of these guys didn't do any good. I'm just saying, it's like, here come the whiz kids, hooray. Here come the smartest guys in the room, hooray. They're the smartest guys in the room, just ask them. They'll tell you again and again and again, and they don't know jack. At this point, my formerly Strategic Air Command friend did not... I'm sorry. I missed something. They discovered, these are McNamara's whiz kids, they had discovered the procurement mistake when McNamara's computer kids at the Pentagon ran an analysis of spare parts consumption rates to optimize the number of parts kept in inventory. SAC had a lot of spare parts for which the consumption rate was near zero, but they had warehouses full of spares. They calculated how many spares SAC would need at the current consumption rates and declared the excess parts to be surplus. The Pentagon had sent the young officer out to verify the condition and count of the spares so that they could be auctioned off as scrap. Now, at this point, my elderly former Strategic Air Command friend did not know the particulars of how it was accomplished, but two things happened. One, the bean counter did manage to leave the base alive. The bean counter did manage to leave the base alive despite numerous suggested solutions that required otherwise. And two, SAC maintains its in case of prolonged nuclear war spare parts for critical systems. He believed that the inventory did, however, disappear from official records. I could easily see it being moved as scrap to some private sole bidder as you proposed for Project Horizon. I love this. Thank you, Chris. You see why I thought of this story when you did your right angle on the DoD not knowing where $1 trillion worth of stuff went to. I'm sure plenty of it is corruption and incompetence, but not all. No question other than to say the backstory you came up with is really, really cool and interesting. Also, in connection with your virtue signal, your work is very underappreciated, almost as much as Zoe's is, and I hope you find the confidence to promote it more widely so others will get the opportunity to support it too. Thank you very much, Chris. That's a lot to think about, and again, you're just out of the park with this kind of depth. What a cool story. Yeah, and I'll eventually work that in. That's where to go. Well, you mean the parts? Yeah. Well, where did you come up with, we just been out there at this base of yours out there. It's not Area 51. That's where you send the gullible and the weak-minded to go look for flying saucers, but the actual hidden base or whatever. And I'm up here on the tower, and I'm looking down, and I look on the ramp down there, and I see 15 B-70 Valkyries with little orbital spacecraft perched on their back. Where'd you come up with those things? Well, we had a lot of spares. You had enough spares to build 15 of them? Well, if we ever had to use the B-70 Valkyrie, sir, we weren't going to be getting any spares after that. So, yeah, that's basically it. It's great. It's really great. I love it. And it's going to add some real realism. And again, that's what the government is supposed to do. I mean, that's what a competent government does. They don't spend money that they don't have and haven't had for 20 or 30 years to buy votes from people. They do things like, okay, if we have to fight a 100-year war, well, we better be ready to win that. So that means we're going to have to buy a bunch of tons of stuff. Here's a super chat from Flat Earth Math. Here's something to put a smile on your face, Skidmark. Thank you. It's actually Skid. It was considered to be Skidmark, but they actually walked that back, so thank you. My father was a B-17 pilot with 15 missions over Nazi Germany in the USAAF, United States Army Air Force, and he loved your book, Silent America. Keep your chin up. Love from Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Plymouth, well, thank you, first of all. Thank you for that, and thank you for the word from your father, and those kind of compliments mean more to me than anything else in the world. But the little cherry here in this lovely super chat is very, very flattering to hear about your father and stuff, and it means the world to me. But the thing that really lit me up is you're from Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Let me tell you why Plymouth Meeting is so important to me. My Aunt Marty and Uncle Rock, who we visited every year, lived in Bermuda for 8 years, got there before my 4th birthday, so we would visit America once a year. And we would go to New York, then we'd visit my Aunt Marty and Uncle Rock. And my Aunt Marty and Uncle Rock lived in a house at the very top of Germantown Pike, just up from Plymouth Meeting Mall. It was on the right-hand side as you're going up the hill. It was a granite fronted house, and on the far side of it was that elementary school. Um, Many years ago, you would go up, the house would be on the right, a little further up on the left would be a pond that was frozen before I think they put apartments over it or something, and they used to ice skate on that. But Plymouth Meeting Mall was, that was it, man. We were just, when you're in, when you're a kid in a golden age of toys and you live in Bermuda and the toy store is the size of a decent sized closet, and you come to an American mall when you're 6 or 7 years old, and you see a toy store like that at Plymouth Meeting Mall, if you're really impressive, you go to King of Prussia. But Plymouth Meeting, the Plymouth Meeting Mall is just a magical place in my life history. And going up Germantown Pike from Plymouth Meeting Mall up to the top of that hill is just my favorite memory. And by the way, um, when we would pull into my Aunt Marty and Uncle Rock's house, the front of the house, as I said, had a granite frontage to it, and there were pine trees there. And when we got out of that car, that's what America smells like to me. It smells like granite and pine trees. And that part of Pennsylvania is just heart of the country. My dad ended up retiring and spending his final couple decades just down the hill there, or down just a little further along. He was in Phoenixville. His house practically bordered Valley Forge National Park. But yeah, I know that area real well, and it's one of my, well, I don't know it super well, but it's my favorite place in the country, maybe my favorite place in the world. So thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the very encouraging words from your heroic father. But especially thank you for reminding me of Plymouth Meeting, because that is a wonderful, wonderful place. Unlimited Hornet Works says, I'm in Valley Forge, PA, possibly the most gun-dense region of the USA. Amen to that, brother. So they apartmented over that pond. I've been a fan of yours since the old Rachel Lucas days. My goodness gracious. I can't remember if you helped her set up her blog or if she helped you set up a Jack. No, she did it for me. Just did it. I hadn't the faintest idea how to do it. She just did it for me. God bless Rachel Lucas. And God bless Plymouth Meeting Mall and B-17 pilots and crewmen. And Valley Forge, you know, this is the thing about what we were talking about earlier is with millennials and Gen Zers. They never had, their boomer parents never actually experienced hardship firsthand. But we got enough of a taste of it for it to stick to us, but not enough of it to instill it on the next generation. And I'll give you a great example of this. Many times throughout my childhood, when I was 6, 7 years old, right in that area in Valley Forge, you know, my dad would take us through Valley Forge National Park in the winter, which we love because we're from Bermuda. Anything below 50 degrees is just crazy cool. Insanely exciting. Below 60, really. Insanely exciting for us. Time to put gloves on, you know, and all kinds of cool things. So we love being cold because we never had to be cold for a long time. And so he would take us out to Valley Forge, and sometimes he'd take us out to Valley Forge in the middle of the winter, and then we get out of the car and we'd go and look, and they have some of these little cabins are still standing there that the Continental Army basically spent an entire winter in that horrible Valley Forge winter. And my dad took us out to these things in the middle of winter and said, you know, okay, take your gloves off and give me your jacket for a minute or two, and then just go inside there and think about spending the next, 3 months out here. And golly, these guys had guts. He said, yeah, they had guts. You know, the snow the snow was just so thick on the ground, and it was like people had painted little red roads, just lines of red connecting these little cabins. And, well, where's the red come from, Dad? Really, red paint? No, Bill. Most of these guys didn't have shoes, so they would wrap their feet with cloth or whatever they had, and their feet were frostbitten and cracked, and they were just bleeding. It was just agony to take a step, and they had to walk all the way down there. You see, way down there, to go down to get some water and bring that back, and then blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, my God, these guys are freaking Supermen. Yeah, they were. And, and yeah, and Sad Wings says no, and no pay either. Yeah. Well, it's just another data point in the fact that the more hardship you have, the happier you are. I don't know how to put it any differently. Nobody wants to give up luxury. Nobody wants to go and live, carrying your own water and all the rest of it. Nobody wants it. And it's not fun when you're doing it. But everything I have ever read and everything I've ever spoken to from people who went through extended periods of hardship, like in combat or guys in Korea and, in Chosin Reservoir or whatever, they said it was absolutely nothing but agony and misery, and I've never, not so much that I've never been happier, as it's just like those are like the most important memories I have because of what we went through together. So, the boomers did not take the Gen Zers to Valley Forge in the middle of winter and then make them take off their coats. That's where they went wrong, or where we went wrong, because it was burned into my dad enough to show it to me, because it was burned into his dad, and so on. And I don't have any kids, but if I had, I would have taken them there. But generally speaking, I don't think people did. It's cold out there. My dad's funeral service was at the Washington Chapel in Valley Forge National Park. So that's a great part of the country. It's really America. Feels like America there. Okay, we're getting through this. Got an Eric Blake. We got a Jacob Belchek. We have another Eric Blake. They're both relatively short. We're gonna do them. We're gonna do them all. Eric Blake, the man with the hat is back. It's Hail Vectron, Citizen Whittle, Hail Vectron. I'll give you the little, the Hitler, Hail Vectron. It's finally happening in long at last. So, question: when by Vectron's Golden Claw you get one of these yourself, where's the first place you and Natasha are gonna go on it? World's first fully electric flying car approved by FAA and accepting pre-orders. Let's have a very quick look at it. Okay, it's kind of cool. Yeah, it's very cool actually. Okay, so it's essentially it's an enclosed Jetson mobile. It's looks like 8 electric rotors on 4 posts, upper and lower rotors on both posts. Fully electric vehicle with low speed that can be driven up to 200 miles on public roads. Oh, driven. And fits into a regular garage, but can also launch vertically into the air with a flying range of 110 miles. Well, Eric, I have to tell you, this may in fact be the very first example of something that I would actually consider to be a flying car, because they've had flying cars since the 40s, and I have always thought them to be absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, it's a car, and you tow your wings behind you, and all you have to do is just stop and find a large field, and then unfold the wings and rotate them, and then stick the bolts in, and you got to go back here, and then you disconnect this, and so on, and you've got a flying car. The qualities that make a good car are things like low center of gravity, good amount of weight, stability, rock solidness, and those qualities make horrible airplanes, and the things that make good airplanes, lightness, flexibility, things like that, make for terrible cars. I've always thought the whole flying car thing, once I actually thought about it, I realized whenever I've seen these flying cars of various forms, it's like, that's going to be the worst flying, if you survive it, that's going to be the worst flying airplane I've ever seen. Look how heavy that thing is. Look how wide it is. It just, no. And then you get it on the ground, and it's like, this is the worst car I've ever driven. But this is a fairly compact quad rotor, and I thought frankly it was just a Jetson mobile, just a full-time flyer, but apparently you can drive it on electric motors. So I guess the question is, why? I'm not shooting it down, dude. It's really cool, and I'm glad you showed it to me. But why would you drive it? I mean, I could see driving it into my garage maybe, but in terms of like, yeah, I'm gonna go from here to Santa Monica, and I believe I'll drive my flying car there today. It's like not happening. Nope. My concern with these kind of things is they do not glide. So helicopters glide, and airplanes will glide, and 747s will glide, but this thing doesn't glide. And I have a glider pilot's reluctance to get into anything that goes through the air and doesn't glide. I have no doubt whatsoever they have all kinds of backups. And I don't know. The one thing about the Jetson flying tilt rotor, flying quad rotor, was that it apparently never gets much above 25 or 30 feet and about 40, 50 miles an hour. And with a decent steel cage around you, you could still kill yourself, but you'd have to put a little effort into it, I would think. But anyway, thanks for sending it, because it just sounds fantastic. Jacob Belchak. Hello, Jacob. Hail, Bill. Hail to you also, Jacob. What do you think is the cause of the rise and fall of the superhero genre? The big comic book nerd claims that comic book stories are modern mythology. Do you think that stacks up? I think it used to. Yes, very much. I ask as a relative young'un. This has been the driving machine of Hollywood for as long as I've been alive. Wow. Raimi's first Spider-Man changed my life as a 7-year-old, and now the whole thing looks like it's grinding to a halt. Is it a culture shift, audience boredom, writers' ineptitude? I don't think it's a cultural shift, and I don't think it's audience boredom. Writers' ineptitude is part of it. What happens, the pattern, Jacob, is the same with the Marvel comics or Spider-Man, all these comic book movie heroes. It's the same pattern as Star Trek and Star Wars, and take the politics out of it, because the writers are writing political diatribes clothed in Star Wars or Spider-Man. But take, just for a minute, pretend that there's no politics in it. It's just badly written. And so what happens is the Raimi's Spider-Man, for example, let's just take that as a start. I thought that was a great movie. I think I haven't seen all of the Spider-Man movies, but I thought Tobey Maguire was by far the best Spider-Man. Although I could not stand Kirsten Dunst at all. But I thought Tobey Maguire was just the perfect mix of kind of like just total nerd who's just amazed at all of this. I thought he was fantastic as Spider-Man. And I didn't see the latest one, but I did see scenes of the three of them, Holland and Garfield and Maguire, all in their Spidey suits, and that was actually pretty cool. But that original Spider-Man, that Raimi Spider-Man, was just a beautifully made movie. And if you go back and look at it, you realize it's not incredibly over the top. It's actually pretty simple from a whiz-bang action point of view. You know, you got the Green Goblin thing there on his little scooter, and that, you know, he's doing that, and Spider-Man's being Spider-Man, and that's it. But if you look at something like the end of Infinity War or something, here's what it is, I think. And I'll tell you what happened. It's better example than Star Trek and Star Wars for this is James Bond. It's exactly similar to this. So you start out with the movie here, and it's really great, and everybody loves it, and it makes a ton of money. So the studio say, we have to make another one of these. So the second one comes out, and it's kind of, you know, kind of true to it. Occasionally, rarely, you get a second movie better than the first. Occasionally, Aliens maybe, Star Wars. But what happens is, it makes so much money that the studio people begin to think that people are going to see Spider-Man just because it says Spider-Man, and to some degree they're right. But this is a case of them killing the goose to get the golden eggs. They see this thing as a money-making. I see this again and again and again. They say we can't fail with a Spider-Man movie. Well, who's going to be in it and who's going to write it? It doesn't matter. It's Spider-Man. People will go see it whether it sucks or not. And to some degree, they did. And then they sucked. And so now they said, well, okay, well, we just have to rinse, we have to just have to squeeze whatever dollars are left in this property. So they just keep cranking them out, and you don't have good writers and you don't have good filmmakers. The people that are doing these current things don't care. They're not fans. People who are writing the new Star Trek shows aren't fans. They're not fans. You don't have a Star Trek fan write something, or some alien has a freaking emotional conniption fit and sends out a wave of butthurt microaggression, sadness that wipes out all the lithium crystals in the galaxy. If you're a fan, you just don't write that. It's just garbage. So the studios say, well, we'll just hire my nephew or whoever, and they're the hot young thing. They made something like Girls or something like that. Now we'll give them a $200 million movie, and they'll bring that young hip edginess to this genre. And nobody wants young hip edginess out of superheroes. We want superheroes to be superheroes. And then the agenda gets in there, and now you've got Natalie Portman, who I don't know how many Portmans. What's his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue. Chris Helmsworth. I don't know how many Portmans Helmsworth can bench press, but I'll bet you it's 4, at least 4, and probably more than that. So Helmsworth looks like the kind of guy who could pick up a hammer like that and throw it a long way and catch it. And the next thing you know, you've got some studio exec saying, well, Helmsworth's getting expensive, or whatever reason you want to go with. And so what we'll do is we'll make her into Thor. Really? Yeah. She weighs less than the hammer does, considerably less than the hammer does. She's a tiny little thing. She's not picking that hammer up. It's not a prayer. Don't worry. We'll take her arms from super, super skinny to somewhat less skinny digitally, and then she'll pick up the hammer and she'll throw it, and everybody go, oh, look, it's Thor. And it's just better and cheaper. It's like people look at it and they go, this is ridiculous. Comic books and science fiction have their own internal rules. And the nice thing about science fiction and comic books is those rules can be whatever you want them to be. You get to make them up. But once you've made them up, you have to play by those rules. You can't go breaking your own rules, because everything else falls apart. Some lazy writer wanted to have Admiral Holdo, who's one of the worst characters in film history, destroy this gigantic, huge, dreadnought that's chasing him. So she engages the hyperdrive, and she goes ripping right through it and takes out the entire fleet. Oh wow! It was a really beautiful visual effect. But now, anytime you see people battling Imperial destroyers and stuff, you say, why don't you just hit them with a hyperspace torpedo? Why don't you just put a hyperspace drive on a brick and launch that at them? Because some lazy writer just decided to do this. So okay, so there we go. So things. The reason I said it's like James Bond is the way that superhero movies will be saved. They'll go away for a while, but they'll eventually come back. And what will happen is this. So you look at the history of James Bond. Start out with Dr. No, and it's just a guy with a gun. And then you get to I guess you only live was it you only live twice second, I think. I'm fairly sure that Goldfinger was third. So anyway, by the time you get to Goldfinger now you've got a guy with a laser, and he's going to rob Fort Knox, and he's going to nuke the gold, which is a brilliant idea, by the way. He's not stealing the gold. He's going to nuke it. He's going to take it out of circulation, make it useless, so the gold I have gets that much more valuable. Okay, Goldfinger's the classic. It's by far the best Bond movie, by far. And then And then the next one, you got, oh, okay, we got Thunderball. Now we got to top Goldfinger. So how do we top Goldfinger? Well, we're going to have a stolen nuclear weapon. We'll have an undersea battle with guys with, with spear guns. Okay, that's cool. And then you start getting into the Roger Moore movies, and it's like, well, how are we going to top this? Well, now we have to have a car that's a submarine, and next thing you know, we've got to be on a space shuttle. Then we got to have a battle on board a space station with fleets of space shuttles. Then we have to have this orbital laser, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And what it's like is, it's like a singer that comes in and hits "From Russia with Love." Was this? I knew it was Doctor No. I mean, You Only Live Twice, but yeah, "From Russia with Love." Also, a very simple movie. Guy on a train with a gun. Goldfinger raises the stakes off of the first two. Thunderball raises them again, and then by the time you get into the Roger Moore movies, you're in space, and then you get the Pierce Brosnan movies, and they're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like the note just gets higher and higher and higher and shriller and shriller and shriller, and then finally, you get to the point where you cannot go any higher. You walk onto the stage singing the highest note that you could possibly sing. Where do you go from there? And there is nowhere to go except back to the beginning. So Casino Royale was brilliant because Casino Royale took you out of the world of orbiting space stations and flying cars and a guy who's gonna mine the Earth's core, and it just took it out of there and went right back to a guy with a gun again. And a guy with a gun is much more emotionally compelling, if you care about the guy with a gun, than the guy with the fleet of space shuttles, because it's just plain shouting. It's just shouting. It's visually shouting. It's like going to a visual cocktail party. Everybody's yelling and screaming, looking for attention. And you look at these latest superhero movies, and they're just, what are they about? Somebody tell me. What's the latest Thor movie about? Why would you go see it? It's not about anything. And you look at Spider-Man was a great example, and the first Iron Man was a really simple movie. It was really simple, and it was wonderful. So when he finally gets that suit, the third suit, you see him in the suit that he built. It's just him walking around in a giant tin can, basically, and it's cool. And then he's like, "Oh, this suit's even better. Oh, now look at this suit." Okay, so we don't have to have 10,000 different things in the sky beams and the aliens and the entire universe is at stake. And if we don't stop this, then the galaxy will catch fire. And blah 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 blah. Get it back down to a scale that people can connect to, and so the long answer to your question is, comic book movies died when they started raising the stakes beyond which an audience could connect to them. You can connect to somebody you like who's being chased by a guy who's shooting at him. You're not likely to connect to a guy who's got a fleet of orange space shuttles that are fighting off a fleet of purple space shuttles with lasers coming out of their frickin' heads, and just ridiculous. That's what the Austin Powers movies were so good at, was spoofing that entire, just how ridiculous the Bond things got. Like I said, Goldfinger, I think Goldfinger might have been the first case of this. There's a great scene in Goldfinger, where Goldfinger has this gigantic laser. Why? I don't know. Maybe he's just bored. But he's got Bond tied to this table, and he turns on this laser, and the laser is coming up Bond, but it's coming up between his legs, and this is a uniquely distressing situation. But you ask yourself, okay, well, he's got this giant laser. Where'd that come from? What's he doing with this giant laser? And next one, you have to have something to top the giant laser, and so the next thing you know, you're off in, crazy land again. So, anyway, I don't blame you. I think Spider-Man, that Raimi Spider-Man was a great movie, and so I think the answer is to give it to the fans. It's no longer $100 million deal. Let the fans do it out of love. Anything you do out of love is great. I saw an interview with Keith Carradine, which I imagine was rather old by this point already, even 10, 15 years old. And Keith Carradine was talking about one of my favorite movies ever, called The Duelists. And it was Ridley Scott's first film. It was made in 78 or 79. And it's beautiful. And it's just a great, great story. Harvey Keitel and and Keith Carradine about this kind of lunatic who gets offended and just keeps trying to have kill this guy who's offended him over the course of 10 years, is constantly fighting duels. I think if I have 5 or 6 duels in this thing. And it's just a beautifully, beautifully, beautifully written and photographed movie, and it's just a great film. I love The Duelists. I love it. And I was listening to Keith Carradine. He was so articulate and so kind, and just seemed like a wonderful guy. But he said the total budget for that was probably around $1 million. That's $1 million 78 money, but still, that's not even a catering budget for a Hollywood film in 1979. And so he said, because we had so little money, we had to be inventive. And that inventiveness carried over to everything. As an example, he said, we had so little money, Ridley wanted to show a scene in the town, and you have to have carriages going by. So there's a shot where my character's walking down this kind of narrow street, and this carriage comes one way with a horse, and it's a black carriage, and a few moments later, a red carriage, goes the other way down the street. Oh, it looks like it's busy. My God, well, busy street, 2 carriages. And Keith said, well, he didn't have the money for 2 carriages. He had the same carriage. He painted the front of the carriage black and the back of the carriage red, drove it past the camera on the black side, turned it around, drove it past the camera on the red side. That's a great example, but that's how things work. So when you get too many resources, you just throw money at things until they go away, and finally you get to the point where the people writing or making the comic book movies don't care about comic books. Because if they did, they'd do it for free. That's how you can tell. If somebody really loves what they're doing, they'll do it for free. They'll pay you to do it. All right, last one. Here we go. It's back to Eric Blake again. Hooray. Peace and long life. Image of Bill Whittle. Live long and prosper. Eric Blake. So I got to ask regarding Mace Mattingly and crew, do you intend to have a joke about Jeff Gordon's name sounding like the iconic NASCAR driver Jeff Gordon? Maybe people on Earth asking him if he loves driving at unreasonable speeds and he doesn't get why they keep asking these kind of questions. I think it's interesting because when you start doing these backstory questions, like the interview thing that I was so completely jazzed about showing you guys tonight, you already, once you start writing a character, writing his dialogue and how they talk and how they think, you start to get kind of a roadmap, and you start to get to know Gordo a little better. And so in answer to your question, which I never thought about because I had not made the connection, to be perfectly honest with you, I think probably Gordo's reaction to this would be, do you ever get confused with Jeff Gordon, the race car driver? Do you say, no, of course not. Why would you think that? My name's spelled Jeff and he is Geoff. They're nothing like each other. Kind of silly question. So that's how it goes. All right, I'm done cooked. Air conditioning is not working again. That's almost a year now without building air conditioning. We had air conditioning back for a solid week or two, and now it just doesn't work anymore. And we've made a bunch of calls. So not only was I sitting here cranking this thing for the last 20 hours trying to get this thing out, and all I get is that pissed me off. But I also close to 78 degrees in here. Who am I kidding? 85, 86, and it's too warm to be really happy. Here's Marusha Dark with a quick question or recommendation. Hey, Bill Little, at your recommendation, I saw Breaking Away. It was good. Also, after the stream, check out the video link in my second forum post. Should help you a lot. Thank you. Yes, Breaking Away, great film. Great little small film. As I mentioned before when I recommended it, if you haven't seen it, go see it. If you haven't seen The Duelist, go see The Duelist. And if you really consider yourself to be somebody who's interested in movies as movies, then you have to see Eraserhead. But for God's sake, don't see it with little kids, and don't see it especially if you are either about to or have just finished eating chicken. Just don't. Just take my word for it. Don't. But Eraser, there. I mean, if I was a film studies major, it's technically a theater major, but basically I was film student. And they didn't have a film department at the University of Florida, so I took film studies in English department, and I hung out with the actors in the theater department. So I got to see a lot of movies. I saw Jules and Jim. I saw The Bicycle Thief. I saw Andalusian Dog. I saw Eight and a Half. I saw Day for Night. I saw all these classic movies. Citizen Kane, all of them. M, Caligari, Metropolis. It was great. It was great. And once I'd seen enough of these things, I mean, I was just living and breathing films from age 16 to probably, well, when I got out here, 28, 30, 29, 30, something like that. Then once I got to Hollywood, I stopped. My love of movies just kind of flew away when I realized what kind of machine this thing is. Anyway, really, really into movies, and then you would see something that would just blow you away. Buckaroo Banzai blew me away in a fun way. I thought, wow, that was really. I thought this thing was going to be strange, but it was just really cool and very hip. But Eraserhead was one of the 2 or 3 times I've ever gone to a movie where I came out of there just going, what did I just see? What on earth was that? That was the most unbelievably unusual, different experience I have ever had. I feel like it rewired my brain. Eraserhead is... It's a movie that made... David Lynch made the movie, and the movie made David Lynch. But it is shockingly disturbing. But it's not ever... It's not gory. It's not violent. It's just wrong. It's just everything about it is just wrong. It's a nightmare. It's a living nightmare. It's exactly what living in a nightmare is. And it's terrific. It's shot in black and white, and the main thing that makes Eraserhead work on reflection is the sound. Because you've got this kind of sympathetic, actually very sympathetic guy, and he walks everywhere with his head down, and everything is bombed out factories, but there's this constant toom, 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 toom. It's just the sound of huge machines crushing things all the time, always, toom, toom. And then when he gets into his apartment, there's always this little electric buzz underneath it. And you look down, if I remember correctly, you see sparks coming out of the wall outlet, and it's just like everything's dangerous. The steam pipes, and there's a little stage behind this steam radiator, and this little tiny woman comes out and does this little dance with these chipmunk teeth, and I'm looking at cheeks, and I'm thinking, what am I seeing here? Who thought of this? What is it? It was amazing. It's a great feeling being taken for a ride like that, if you're in the mood to do that kind of traveling. And visually, it's just so striking. Yeah, it was great. Breaking Away was a lovely movie. I expected to be bored, and I was not at all. I thought it was wonderful. What am I looking for here? I don't know. Oh, there it is. Okay, now it's time for this one to go home. Requiem for a Dream, says Eric Blake. Possibly the most depressing film of all time. It's up there, man. It's up there. It's up there. Boy, Eraserhead. I saw that movie and I just went, this guy's crazy, brilliantly talented. I felt that way about the Talking Heads too. I got into the Talking Heads real early because I had a cool friend in college named Kelly Donnell, who was also a film studies major, and he might have been a media major or communications major or something. Kelly was the first guy. This would be 79, maybe 79 or 80, something like that. Kelly was the first guy I ever saw wearing the Wayfarers, with the kind of, buzz cut sides. He was the first guy kind of looking dressed like Buddy Holly in the late 70s, early 80s. He told me about this band called The Police, And I thought, and I listened to Remain in Light, and I just thought, what is this? I grew up when I was in high school. The number one rock and roll song in America was "You Light Up My Life," or "Fly Robin Fly," or "I Shot the Sheriff," or "Rock the Boat," or "Billy Don't Be a Hero." It's just it was a dystopian nightmare, and all of a sudden, all of this horrible disco-related dreg just gone, and now I'm looking at David Byrne and he's flipping over backwards and he's doing this dance uh, in letting the days go by and burning down the house and but it was the Talking Heads actually. I got into the Talking Heads real early, and that Remain in Light album is just it's just strange. I'll tell you who else, and then I'll go. I'll tell you who else I got into quite a bit in the early '80s, because it was the same kind of Eraserhead experience. I heard something, and it was so different and so smart that I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. It just went past me. I was just, what? And that was Laurie Anderson. I thought I was I loved Laurie Anderson. I loved the stuff she was doing. I think she got worse over time. You usually do, but I remember the first time I heard "Let X Equal X." What? That's insane. That's just brilliant. I had heard Laurie Anderson, for those of you not familiar, was a musician and performance artist, very closely cropped hair, early '80s, and very, 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 very avant-garde. And I had heard, and this is when I just said, well, then this person's just a genius. I had heard that Laurie Anderson had taken a piece of magnetic tape with a word or two on it or something, and strung that magnetic tape on a violin bow, and then, when those magnetic tapes would play by running them over the tape head, and she would play this magnetic tape like a violin. I thought, God, that's incredible. Yeah, let X equals X, and there was a couple lines in there. I'm trying to think. I just remember her saying, "Satellites are out tonight," and then there was another line she had. It's like something like, "And he told me he was a hat check clerk at an amusement park," and I said to myself, "Oh well, right again," something like that. And as this is fantastic. Sharky, it's Sharky's night tonight. That's right. That's great. Sharky's day. Telephone call for Mr. Sharky. White courtesy telephone, please. Something like that. Sharky's day. Sharky's day today. She's just when you see somebody goes that far out, it's great. I happened to see Road Rider points out Devo. I just stumbled upon, and somebody was using it in another context, but they cut together some somebody thrashing somebody, and they cut it to Whip It. And so I saw Whip It for the first time in 20 years probably. And I'm looking at these guys wearing these flower pots. And I'm thinking, some people didn't realize that Devo was not only in on the joke, they were like maybe the first trolls that I could ever remember. They were just so absurd, and people are going, "These guys are really absurd," and Devo's going, "We're not absurd. We are Devo, DEVO. What's Devo stand for? De-evolution. Oh, really? Yeah. Whip It, Mexican Radio, Shock the Monkey." Games Without Frontiers, those songs blew me away. And the last time I remember, Wang Chung, yeah, Actually, Wang Chung had was originally spelled. I think it was originally spelled Uang, Wang, and then they just said, screw it, everybody's calling us Wang. Wang Chung, everybody have fun tonight. Yeah, it was fantastic. The last time I remember, I'm not making this up. I was working as a limo driver, so this would have made it 91, maybe 92. And I was coming back, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm driving this limousine back to the base in San Marino near Pasadena. And Boston is awesome too, Dave. And I heard this song, and it was the middle of the night, but I had to pull the car over. I just had to pull the car over, and this you couldn't just go hear it again. This was no internet. They played it on the radio, and you just had to wait, hopefully, for another 4 hours to get to hear it again. You just couldn't just go hear it like you can now, which is awesome, by the way. I'm not complaining. But the song that made me pull over was "Birdhouse in Your Soul" by They Might Be Giants. I could not believe what they were doing. I grew up under a lighthouse. I lived right underneath Gibbs Hill Lighthouse in Bermuda. I have a special place in my heart for lighthouses. And I'm listening to these guys saying, there's a picture opposite me of my primitive ancestries, talking about this little birdhouse in your soul. It's a little nightlight shaped like a bluebird. It's a song about a nightlight. I have a picture of me, of my primitive ancestry, which stood on rocky shores and kept the beaches shipwreck-free. Now I respect that a lot. I'd be fired if that were my job. After killing Jason off and thousands screaming Argonauts, or dozens, something. I thought, he's referencing lighthouses. He's talking about Jason and the Argonauts, and he's singing as a nightlight, which is in the shape of a bird, little blue bird, and he keeps it in the oven by the light switch. That's just completely like, wow. That's just crazy out of the box, kind of. It's like the first time I saw a Burt Rutan airplane. It's like, what? Is that possible? Yes. Yes. I have a story to tell from my electrical well. It's a simple message, and I'm leaving out the whistles and bells. So, yeah, and the chorus of that, Blue canary in the oven by the light switch. Who watches over you? Make a little birdhouse in your soul. Blue canary in the oven by the light switch. Who watches over you? That song made me cry, actually. But a couple times when I was really just kind of down, and I heard these guys saying there's a little, there's a blue canary in the oven by the light switch who watches over you, and I guess it was just a real bad day or something. But I heard that and I thought, okay, well that's cool, great. Kids nowadays, the music is nothing but noise, but boy. And last thing is, for those of you out there, a very rare specialty. The one thing I can remember, it's Blue Canary in the outlet by the light switch? I guess it must be. Oh, I just did one of those, I misunderstood the lyrics. So, of course it is. How could I have not gotten that? I thought it was Blue Canary in the oven by the light switch. I like it in the oven better. Who cares? Anyway, okay, now you've ruined the song forever. But there was a guy at Walt Disney World, and very few people have known who this guy is, but if you ever saw him, you never forgot him. He was at Tomorrowland at the food court. He was there for about 5 or 6 years. And I went there, and I heard this guy, and this was right as the beginning of synthesizers were coming in. It's just it may have been the first time I ever heard anybody sample like a sound and play it on a keyboard. And his name was Michael Iceberg, and he had a show at the Tomorrowland food court, and there was this giant mirrored pyramid, and when the show opened, this pyramid would unfold, and the inside of it was reflected because he's got like 7 keyboards there, and he's just having so much fun. And he sang this song called wasn't Reverie. It was anyway. I never forgot it, and I looked him up not too long ago, and last I saw of him, this is I don't know 7 8 years ago. He was you know in his 60s, very nice man. Most of his hair was gone. Kind of an older Jewish gentleman living in a small apartment in New York, and he would sing this song for his wife, and she came in, and I remember hearing that song in 1977 maybe, and just never forgot it. So there's all kinds of cool people out there. Switched on Bach, yes, I remember Switched on Bach. Wasn't that Walter later Wendy Carlos? All right, and Tamita and what was his name? All the synthesizer guys. Anyway, yeah, pop culture's fun, man. So thanks for being here and thanks for joining us. So we'll try to have it a little better by next time. And you're from this smile more while I'm talking. Me, I'll have to talk like this all the time. But you know, 3 weeks ago I couldn't get an image, so at least I'm making some progress. So that's something anyway. Okay, so that'll do it. Thanks again, especially to the members of BillWhittle.com who make this show possible and keep on coming. And God bless them all. And we love you all, and you guys are fantastic. And the Stratosphere Studio Lounge crew are just awesome and smartest people I ever met. And it's a real pleasure having you over on a regular basis. So Miami Vice, yeah. So I have a friend who's on Miami Vice a couple times. A couple friends who were on Miami Vice a couple times. So we'll see you on Thursday for the Stratosphere Lounge. And I think I haven't put up the last one, so I will do that. Okay, thanks for joining us. And anything I want to leave us with? No, not really. I don't think so. Okay, we'll just see you next time right here on your very own Stratosphere Studio.